Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our 2024 10th grade parent meeting. My name is Dave Bailey. I'm one of the assistant principals here at Ridgewood High School and director of guidance. And I'm here with Mrs. Yannone, our 10th grade advisor. So thank you for being here. This is our third year um, doing the 10th grade parent meeting, and we hope it's an informative night for you. We moved it to virtual just to make it a little bit more accessible to everybody. We're also going to record it. That way we can share it on our website. We'll share out the video to everybody tomorrow. It'll also be available on our YouTube page. So we hope that this is a little bit more accessible for you. So without further ado, I just want to get into tonight's goals. And really, the main thing is we want to inform you without overwhelming you. We do have a lot of information to share tonight, but we hope that it is all information that will help you. We want to discuss the sophomore year so far and the months ahead. We also want to preview junior year and discuss the timeline until the next time we meet as a group, which will be the 11th grade parent meeting in November. And throughout our presentation, we hope you hear and continue to hear a little bit about what we believe in our mission, our values, and our principles here at Ridgewood High School. Mrs. Yannone, take it away.
Hi, how are you? I'm Meredith Yannone, and I'm the new GA for the class of 2026. I do use the word loosely as well. I am new to the class of 2026. I am not new to RHS. This is actually my sixth class that I'll see through their time at Ridgewood High School. And I'm just going to share with you a little bit about what I see my job is here as a GA. I sort of see myself as a parent to the class. Your kids will have lots of people here to help them through their time here. There are classroom teachers that they'll work with, coaches, guidance counselors who will help them with course selection and the college process, but also the bumps and bruises that come with being a teenager. Case managers, and even our assistant principals and our principal. I feel like my job here is everything that isn't course selection and isn't the college process. Officially, I'm in charge of attendance and discipline for the class, and you may have received one of those automated attendance letters with my name on it. But I really feel like my job is to help them navigate RHS. Much of their high school will be coursework, but there's this whole other part of their life here, finding clubs and activities, navigating the hallways, dealing with heartbreak or a bad grade on a test. Just last week, I helped two new students learn how to work a combination lock for their lockers. I always have Jolly Ranchers here in my office, and sometimes your kids need something sweet to help them through the afternoon, so they'll stop by and say hi and grab their favorite flavor. I also think it's helpful for both kids and parents to have a point person. I may not be able to answer all of your questions or solve every one of your problems, but after 29 years here at RHS, I certainly know who to send you to if I don't have the answer. For your kids, this experience of 20 years as a GA and 30 years of teaching chemistry can prove to be valuable. But I can also be a great resource for all of you as well. In addition to my school experience, I'm also a mom to an 18 and a 22-year-old. I have experienced the college process as a parent. The stress of this is fresh, and knowing the balance of when to step in and when to step aside is a tricky one that I've navigated both as an educator and a parent. Mr. Bailey was actually my son's guidance counselor And in a little bit, he's going to tell you that the college process doesn't really need to begin until junior year. So my son listened to his every word. And when I would lightly bring up the subject of college, he would say, Mr. Bailey said, not yet. Um, he was right, by the way. And he's now graduating from college and in a really good spot. So thanks, Mr. Bailey. Um, it also, on a more serious note, if your child is struggling in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out. We have so many supports here for our students in need. And we can't help what we don't know. So please pick up the phone and call or send an email. Anyway, that's just a little bit about me and what I do here. If you have any questions, you should feel free to call me, email me, and I'll get back to you right away. I'm very happy to help. All right. Thank you. And back to you, Mr. Bailey.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Yannone. And thank you to those who answered. And we will have a Q&A period at the end of this presentation. So there'll be some time to answer some questions. But I just want to go through a few of the items tonight on the agenda to see if I can answer them before we get to that point. So I want to talk a little bit about a large part of my job as the assistant principal, but also director of guidance. So I want to talk a little bit just about the guidance department and remind everyone of the different roles. As Mrs. Yannone said, we have a great advisor team here. So Mrs. Yannone will be with your students until they graduate in a few short years. And each of them also have a guidance counselor who is another person who will guide them along the way. And some of your students also may have a case manager if they have an IEP. So communication is a big part of what we do. Again, we have a lot of information that comes through, and our goal is to get it out and disseminate it to our parents and students in a way that does not overwhelm them. I understand there's a lot of messaging that comes through the school, so we're trying to develop different ways for you to access it when you want. Our website has been upgraded, and we will actually be going to a new website later in the spring, our district, which is supposed to be a lot more user-friendly. So we look forward to that. We also post an RHS guidance monthly newsletter. There's a link here in the presentation, which will be shared with you tomorrow. But that's just an update every month from our guidance department to just keep parents and students on pace and keep them ahead of schedule and kind of give them a preview on what's coming up next. And then also social media, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Maroon Guidance. So over the last month, your students have been in Sophomore FOCUS. They may or may not have talked about that, but during the third quarter, the first 4 weeks of their third quarter in their schedule, they had 4 sessions with our guidance counselors in what we call Sophomore FOCUS. We developed this program about 4 or 5 years ago. Mr. Nias, our principal, who was in my current position at the time, created this as a way to give a little more attention to the 10th graders. You know, we have freshman focus. Of course, juniors are, there's a lot of attention on them, and then seniors same way. So we wanted to build some programming for our sophomores, and that's how this 10th grade parent meeting came to be as well. So what we did is we had 4 sessions. The first one was course scheduling, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Then we went into an introduction of SCORE and a grade 10 timeline. The third session was a preview of 11th grade, some initial 11th grade planning and resume building. And then the final session was one that I do every year with Mr. Fabish, where we talk to the kids about leadership, culture, and legacy. And I'll touch on that in a minute. So with scheduling, this meeting is very, it's good timing because tomorrow is actually the due date for your students to request their schedule for next year. So teachers have made recommendations in the month of February. The Skyward Scheduler has been open since last week. Your students have, had meetings with counselors in February, have been given a lot of different notice. If there's any who forget tomorrow, we will track them down Monday and Tuesday. Don't worry, but the guidance office has been very busy the last few days with kids coming in and out, and they're requesting the classes they would like to take next year based on what they were recommended for. So by tomorrow, we ask that the students bring in a signed confirmation page with the parent signature, just so we're all on the same page of what your kids will be taking next year. If there are any disagreements in teacher recommendation, we do have an appeals process. I've attached the link, or I've included the link to the letter in this presentation. We sent an email home with all of this information. I believe it was February 29th that went through Skyward. So you should all have this in your inbox somewhere as well. But we do have an appeals process where we allow students, if they disagree with the recommendation, to appeal. And our instructional supervisors really lead the way and have conversations with teachers, with students, with parents, to see if it's a good idea to potentially override the recommendation. The reason we have a process is because we want all of our students to be appropriately placed. We want them to increase their rigor each year and challenge themselves, but we want them to do it where they have enough balance in their life. So it really takes a lot of individual counseling. So this appeals process intentionally has multiple steps so that we make sure that our teachers, our supervisors, our parents, sometimes me as the administrator, that we all have a thoughtful discussion on what's best for each of our kids. So thank you for sticking to the process. I know it's a little bit drawn out, but it is intentional that way. So we ensure that all our kids are appropriately scheduled to the best of our ability in September. So just a brief review on scheduling. All of your students will have the 4 core classes next year. So they'll have English, that's a requirement. They'll have some form of United States history 2. They'll be in a math level, most likely algebra 2 or pre-calculus. They'll all take a science, which will either be chemistry or physics. And then that 5th course everybody has to take physical education and wellness. So that leaves them with 2 periods. Some will move along into a 3rd year of a world language. We do recommend that when possible. But if it's the end of the road, then there are other options that our students can take advantage of. And sometimes it's best to retire from world language, pick up something else. Junior year, there's a lot of academic electives, whether it's computer science, business, humanities, economics. There's a lot of different options where if a student decides to stop a world language, they're going to be taking challenging courses in other areas. So again, it comes down to that individual counseling. And then that 7th class will be an elective. So an example of what a schedule may look like would be this. This is just a template, but you see the 7 periods, and then that 8th period is a free period for all of our students. Okay, so this is an example of an 11th grade schedule. So as a parent, what you need to know is the process is happening right now. Tomorrow is the deadline. Our counselors, beginning Monday, will go through every single one of their students, and they will make sure that they're appropriately scheduled. If there's any issues, if they picked too many courses, they haven't picked enough, they picked the wrong, the counselors will find that, they'll call them down, and they're going to be cleaning up their schedules next week. Then it will go into really the master schedule planning, which takes a few months, as you can imagine, with 1,800 students at Ridgewood High School. It's a pretty daunting task, and that's why we have to get going pretty early. Okay, so I just wanted you to know the timetable of scheduling, and if you have any individual questions on your student's schedule, you definitely want to contact their guidance counselor. So I want to just talk a little bit about my last session in Sophomore Focus with the kids, because it's always a great time of year for me to get into the classroom with the kids for 4 days. And really, we challenge them. We tell them, listen, just like that, you went from 8th graders to the upperclassmen in a few short months at Ridgewood High School. And Mrs. Yannone's been here 30 years. I've been here since 2010. As the upperclassmen go, this school goes. They set the tone. They set the culture. The current 8th graders and current 7th graders are going to be looking up to them. So I challenge them to think about what their legacy, what they want their legacy to be. when they're on that field, when they're about to walk out and graduate in a few short years, and Mrs. Yannone's leading them onto the field, what would they like the class of 2026 to be remembered as? So we talk about legacy and what that means. We also talk about leadership and being a leader. We talk about, as upperclassmen, there being more opportunities for them to be have titles, whether it's captain or lead in a play or president of a club. But we say, even if you don't have a title, that does not mean you can't lead from where you are. You don't need a position to be a leader. And some people with positions are not strong leaders. So we talk a little bit about the difference between leaders and leadership, and the small things that everybody can do to have a positive impact at Ridgewood High School. We also talked a lot about fear of failure. So a pattern I've noticed with our kids over the last 4 or 5 years, and I think it's accelerated a little bit, is just this need to be perfect, and kind of a fear of stepping outside of their comfort zone and making a mistake. So we had discussions, and some really honest discussions. The kids were awesome, just about why they're afraid to maybe step outside their comfort zone and push themselves. Why is it safer in the middle and feels better, like more comfortable to be average? So I had some great discussions with the kids. And really, the most common reason is just like adults, they're afraid of how others are going to judge them. So they're afraid if they do fail, what is that going to look like? Are they going to be able to recover from that? So it's very interesting with talking to young people about that, because we all know we only grow and excel from moments of failure. Not only, but those moments of failure and those dips in the valley are really great learning moments for us as we grow. So for teenagers, what we want to do is, of course, we don't want to see anyone fail. But as I'm a parent of 3, I think as the adults in their life, this is kind of a safe area where we can challenge them to step outside their comfort zone, and not always have to feel like they have to be perfect. So I asked them to really think more about the process, rather than just always the outcome. I had a student, a sophomore girl, who was just brutally honest, and she was great, and she's a really strong student and gets good grades. But she said, I feel like I'm just checking things off the box every single day just to kind of get the grade, but I'm not truly learning. So we really talk more about that, and talk more about the process of learning and growing and enjoying their time here in high school, and not always trying to think of just like the outcome and the grade, and maybe what college they're going to go to, and how they're going to look on social media or things like that. So I just want you to know we had some really great conversations. I asked them what they thought the culture of Ridgewood High School is, and I asked them, in 2.5 years, what are areas we can improve? So as administrators, as leaders in the building, we want to make policy decisions. We want to make, when we're having these conversations and meetings, we want to try to make decisions about Ridgewood High School for current students in 2024. Like if we're making decisions based on a sophomore in 2012, then we're behind the 8 ball. So I asked them for feedback. They gave me a lot of feedback, a lot of suggestions, from all sorts of areas, from the cafeteria food to free periods to you name it. But we had some really good discussions, and I hope at the end of the day that they feel like myself, Mr. Nias, Mrs. Wood, our other assistant principal, Mrs. Yannone, that we care about them and that we want to listen to their voice, because, like I said, they are the pulse of the school. Okay, so let's talk briefly about, again, our next meeting together will be next November. So I'd like to talk a little bit about, it's March 7th. Let's bridge the gap to next November when we meet again. Of course, you can always reach out to us, but I just want to make sure we're on the same page of what we suggest that we all should be doing. So the most important thing is right now is to really control what we can control. And we talk to the students about that, is not looking too far ahead, but what can you do today? What's the next right thing that you can do? So keeping up with their academic work, finishing the sophomore year strong in the classroom, selecting their junior year schedule, These are things that they can do right now. If they need help, if they need support, they have many people here, not only adults. We have the National Honor Society tutors, and I have a link here on the presentation that can help them in the classroom. Outside of the classroom, they're going to have naturally some more leadership positions available to them as they get older. The most common question we get from parents this time is like, how do we improve the resume? What should we be doing in the summer? The key thing here, and the answer I'll always give to students is, if there's an opportunity or something that you're passionate about, that you want to do, that is going to help you grow in a certain area, then go for it. If you're doing something just because you think down the road someone may think it looks good on your resume, but you really don't have an interest or passion about it, don't do it. You have too much on your schedule. I'd rather you focus your energy on your true passions, or just be a kid and enjoy your time with family, friends, and I'm talking about the summer when there's a little bit more downtime. Colleges, we're talking about that. They can see through the resumes that are kind of built with fluff. They would prefer quality over quantity. So if they're in 3 or 4 activities where they show commitment and they've really, been involved for years, that's more meaningful from a resume standpoint than 10 or 11 things or items on a resume that really don't have a lot of depth. Okay, so quality over quantity. We have some college fairs coming up, which I'm going to show you in the next few slides. So that's something that we can do in the spring. And then again, if there are any summer opportunities, we do have a job and volunteer board link. We have a website here that you can visit. If there's any opportunities that your kids want to take advantage of this summer, they can find them there. So we have 2 fairs coming up in the next few weeks. The first one is right here at Ridgewood High School in Gym 1. It's called College Night. We have about 75 schools at this time coming, and hopefully we have a few more. But this is nice because the colleges come right to our backyard. It's from 7 o'clock to 9. It's a little bit of a smaller atmosphere. It's usually just Ridgewood High School students and parents. So I really encourage you. It's a really nice time for sophomores in their spring to just, not a lot of pressure, but walk around, talk to some different schools, learn a little bit more, ask some questions. It's just kind of a low risk evening, and it's right here in our backyard. So I really encourage you to do that. And I want to thank our guidance department for leading the way in that. Our team's really done a nice job in getting multiple schools to attend. The next night is a much larger one. So this is at Ramapo College. This is the Directors of Guidance from Bergen County, which I'm a member of. This is our fair. It's big. So it's at Ramapo College. It's 3 hours. You're going to have a lot more schools there. So if there's some schools that don't attend ours that are there, it might be a nice opportunity for you to take a walk around. I would encourage you, if you can, to go a little later. So I would say go at like 7:30 to 8:30. It's really packed around 5:30 to 7. So if you can go a little later, I would encourage you to do that. The room really starts to spread out and it's a little less overwhelming. So those are 2 fairs that are coming up that I wanted you to be aware of. On April 25th, we have our college speaker series panel. So I'm going to give you some updates tonight on college, but really we're going to go really in depth that evening. I'll be hosting it with some other counselors, and at this point we're looking to get some admission counselors as well, just to talk about the latest trends in college admissions, just to give you as much information as the parents and our students out there on what we're seeing and what we're hearing and latest trends on data and different admissions pieces. So that'll be April 25th. We'll send out reminders, and that will be another virtual evening. Okay, as we get into the summer, it is a nice time to start taking a look at a few colleges, even if they're just local colleges or a school on the way to maybe a vacation, or just to get your student on a campus or two. To see what they like, and sometimes more importantly, to see what they don't like. That's really helpful. So no pressure, but just to get them feeling what a college campus looks like and maybe what they're interested in. We want to start thinking of a testing plan for junior year. So if your student took a PSAT sophomore year, great. We recommend all juniors to take the PSAT in October as well. It's a great opportunity to start taking practice ACTs or SATs just to see which test your student may prefer. You can talk also on how they may want to prepare. So every student is different. Some are going to want private tutors, some are going to want group tutoring, some are going to utilize free resources, some may use online tools, books. So it's different for each student. But we do recommend, and I want to be clear with this because it is, a test optional right now, which I'm going to get into in a minute. We do recommend that each of our students at Ridgewood High School, if they're going to apply to college, that they sit for testing because the benefits outweigh the negatives at this point, other than it taking up time and studying, and there can be some added pressure. But there's over 1,800 schools now that are still test optional. There's been a few that have moved back to requiring the test, but at this time it's a very small number, and it's like the highly rejective, I call them highly rejective, highly selective schools that are starting to move back. So there's a chance that other schools will trail them and follow them and require SAT and ACT for the for when you apply. But nonetheless, we want all of our students to, if they're college bound, to try to sit for an SAT or ACT. And we recommend doing that for the first time by the middle of junior year. The SAT is now fully digital. So I have a little link here that gives a little more information on that. Saturday is our first day giving it digitally here at Ridgewood High School and all over the country. So I think it's going to be a positive for our students. They're used to taking tests on the Chromebook, and I think it's going to be a good thing for our kids. But just so you know, the SAT now is fully digital. Also in July, just keep an eye out for our Ridgewood High School class of 2024 senior survey results. That'll come out in mid-July. And that is all the data you can want on college admissions. So this class right now applying all of the results from each school. So obviously we don't use names, it's just numbers, but it really gives you a good glimpse of different colleges and how our students did this year. And it's Ridgewood High School specific data. So it's really helpful for students and parents when we start looking at schools. So that will be out in July. Okay, so next year, junior year, I just want to talk a little bit about the mindset. And Mrs. You might have a thought on this, but I do think junior year gets a bad rap. Like I told the sophomores this in Sophomore FOCUS. I always hear it's the most important year of their life and this and that. And I tell them, no, it's not. It's not. It's an important year. It is the last year academically where your final grades will be on the transcript. But I want them to also enjoy this time in their life. They're upperclassmen. It's a special time. I don't want them to worry it away on this goal down the road that's really, there's a lot that's going to be out of their control. I want them to just focus in on doing the best they can every day and enjoying this time in their life. I tell them the college they go to or wherever they want to go to, it's going to be a part of their journey, but it's not going to define them as a person. It's going to be a part of them, but it won't define them. So we try to talk to our students about that. Again, I think junior year gets a bad rap. I know there's pressure. I'm not trying to, belittle that at all, but I also want them to be kids and to get involved and to be leaders and to get the most out of the Ridgewood High School experience. So that's how I look at junior year.
I would also say that it's a really exciting year for them because there's more choice in their schedule. Like as they're doing their schedules for next year, there's more choice in that, and they get to take some ownership in what they're taking, and there's a little bit more freedom. And so I think it's kind of an exciting year in that way because they get to they have more choice and they get to pick more what they want to do. So I agree with Mr. Bailey. It does get a bad rap, but it's been getting a bad rap for a very, very long time. So we're always fighting against that.
And it is tough. Like academically, it's a very rigorous year, especially for our students who are taking a lot of honors and APs. And I would say, as a parent, just to keep an eye early on your kids. I do see um, some signs of burnout with our juniors. So it's the most common year where you're going to see it. So if you see, any mood changes or behavioral changes, or maybe sleeping patterns, or we want to kind of come together quickly as a school and as a family, and just help make the right decision academically. It's never worth pushing a student where it's affecting the other parts of their life, including their extracurriculars and their friends and their family and those times. So I always say there's 24 hours in a day. If you think of that as a clock, doctors say that teenagers should be sleeping 7 to 8 hours a day. The kids always laugh when I say that, but that's what doctors say. Then they're in school for 8 hours. That leaves about 7 to 8 hours each night for extracurriculars, homework, eating, showering, family time, friend time. So, the day tightens up very quickly. So we want to make sure that they're nice and balanced. Get involved, like we said, enjoy the journey. The PSAT in October, the National Merit Scholarship Program. That is a scholarship program based on junior year PSAT scores. So if your student really excelled, there's a state number each year where they may qualify for the National Merit Scholarship, which is a scholarship that can offer some financial reward, but also it is an impressive feat. So we do ask our juniors to sit for that and take it seriously. Again, the ACT, SAT, we'd like winter to be the first time you sit for that. And then the junior parent meeting will be in November. So that'll be our kickoff. We do that earlier now. We used to do that after winter break. We'll meet in November. We'll do a college kickoff or post-graduation kickoff. Your student may not be going to college, which is fine. And then we'll have individual junior year conferences. So it'll be you, your student, and the guidance counselor. It's one of the most important meetings you'll have at Ridgewood High School, where you'll sit down and you'll discuss the individual plan for your student. We're also looking at building out junior focus. So we've noticed in the last few years with our rising seniors, with colleges having earlier and earlier deadlines and the Southern schools becoming more popular with our kids, that there's been a little bit more panic in the summer. So we're looking at developing a junior focus, which would be in like the May, June area, where we would go over a lot of the things we typically go over in September. We would cover that in May and June, so our students can feel a little bit ahead of the game, and hopefully the anxiety would be reduced a little bit. So your class may be the first one to benefit from that. We're looking to build that out. Okay, I do see some questions. So before I get into a college piece, if there's any questions, you can post them in the Q&A and I will try to get to them. So the first is, how many years of language is recommended for colleges? I've heard some schools need 3 and some are good with 2. So they want it all. So I always say it's up to the individual student. So what I mean by that, a lot of times a student will be a sophomore in, say, Spanish 3 honors or a level 3, and they really kind of at the end of the road. They can get to 4, but it's really going to be a struggle. It might affect the other classes junior year. So I say at that point, it's most likely best to say, you know what, we did 2 years. We have the graduation requirement. The minimum requirement for most colleges is 2. You've gotten to level 3, and they'll see that on the transcript. Let's drop it, but let's pick it up with an academic elective. So there's going to be strengths and weaknesses in every single transcript of every applicant. So it really takes a lot of individual counseling there. So if they can take a 3rd year, great. If not, we're going to replace it with another course that's going to be challenging. And, so it really, that's where the individual counseling really helps. The list of colleges coming to the college fair, we will share that out. We're just finalizing that, and we want to make sure it's accurate, but we will get a list out about a week before. The pre-ACT. So we are looking next year to offer the pre-ACT. It probably won't benefit your class, but they do have a pre-ACT similar to PSAT. We'd like to offer that March, April. So give students the ability, if you have younger students, they would have access to the PSAT in October of their sophomore year, a pre-ACT March, April of their sophomore year, and then another PSAT junior year in October. So by the end of their sophomore year, they could have the ability to have a practice PSAT or practice SAT and a practice ACT before they go to junior year. So that is in the works. I'm sorry, it's not going to help your kids this year. If a student is appealing a recommended class, the parents need to sign the form for tomorrow and wait until the appeal is settled. Sign the form, and then you will just go through the appeals process. There is a list of the colleges for the larger fair at Ramapo. That's one of the questions. It's included in that. I'll share this presentation tomorrow, but it's included in that barcode. Okay, so those are all the questions for now. So I'm just going to move to the last part of the meeting, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end for any other questions. So just some college admission updates. We'll go a lot deeper into this on April 25th, but just some talking points. And these are things, we have a very passionate group of counselors in college admissions right now who, they're traveling a lot. They're talking to different admissions people on the other side in higher education. They're reading a lot. They're active. I went up to Scarsdale for a panel last month with some top high schools from Long Island, Connecticut, Westchester County, really high achieving high schools. And it was all about college admissions. So really an education on, what other schools are seeing in admissions. And that had a lot of people from higher education. So we're doing our best to get out there to educate ourselves so we can best educate you. But a lot has been changing in college admissions, and I'm going to show you a few of those in a minute. But the first is the future of test optional. So again, it really doesn't affect how we're going to counsel kids. We want our kids to take the SAT and or ACT. We think it can only help them, all right? But there is a trend of a few of the highly rejected schools announcing they're going to return to requiring testing. So the thought is, are others going to follow? So right now, MIT, Brown, Dartmouth, and Yale in the last 3 or 4 weeks have said they're going to go back to requiring an ACT or an SAT for students who apply. At the same time, schools like Michigan, Villanova, Columbia, Cornell, Vanderbilt, BU, they've said we're staying test optional. And again, there's about 2,000 schools that are still test optional. So we'll see where this goes. It's not going to affect our advice to students and parents, but it is something of interest when we're applying to schools of which schools want test scores and which do not. For the test optional schools, I will say if the student has a strong score, it definitely helps them in the application process. So we would send in that case. The applications continue to accelerate. It's easier to apply. More kids will apply now because of test optional. Because there's a little bit less self-selection, meaning if I was a student applying to Michigan and I had a 1050 SAT and I had to send that, I might say, you know what, it's not even worth it. I'm nowhere near their average SAT. I'm not going to apply to that school. But with test optional, I don't have to send that score. Maybe my transcript is pretty strong and my extracurriculars are good. So why not? I'll send that to Michigan. So that's one of the reasons. It's easier to apply. Like I said, there's the colleges want it to be as easy as possible. They want the applications to rise for different reasons. So the applications are pretty astounding, some of the numbers, and I'll share them with you. The role of enrollment management has really increased in the last few years. So it's not only, and this is where we talk about what you can control and what you can't control in the process. Some schools have needs that they just have to fill, and they're coming from the president, they're coming from enrollment managers, they're coming not from admissions people, they're coming from other people making decisions and telling admissions people what we're going to do. Whether that's we're going to take more people from a different part of the country, we're going to take more people for a specific major, we're going to take more people who can pay cash and who don't need financial aid. Like there's all these different things that are totally out of our kids' control. But I just want our students and parents to know, kind of the rules of the game that they're about to play when they're applying to colleges. Deferrals are increasing, so we've seen that a lot this year. So there's a few reasons for that. The admissions departments are totally overwhelmed. NYU, for example, um, their admissions director asked their higher ups for about 50 new people to be able to help them with the admissions process and to be able to really do it the right way and give attention to each applicant. And they were given less than 10. So they're not able to get to all these applicants, at least with humans. So there's a lot more deferrals to delay the process. And also with more people applying, and when I say deferral, so when a student applies early action, I apologize for kind of jumping right to that. Early action is an earlier deadline. So think November, December of senior year, your student would apply to a college early action or early decision, which is a binding agreement. A college can at that point either accept, deny, or they can defer. When they defer, they're deferring the student to the regular decision pool. Okay. And with more applications, they want to make sure that the kids they're accepting are students who really want to be there. So that's why deferrals are up. It's kind of a test also to see, all right, does this kid really want to be at our school? Let's see, we'll defer them to regular. So it draws it out a little bit, but that is a pattern we're seeing. Building a balanced list of schools is more critical than ever. Okay. It has to be based on data. It takes individual counseling. That's why we have our senior survey. That's why we have our counselors doing research. We want to be really honest and transparent about whether that's a reach school, a match school, or a safety school. And, ideally we want our kids this time of year as a senior to have as many options as possible if they're planning on going to college. And last but not least, I would just say this, and, Mrs. Yannone, her son ended up at Marquette, and he's really thriving and really proud of him. He's about to graduate at the end of the year. But find a college that values and honors your student. This will be the place where they're happiest and most successful. The more I do this, I've done this since 2010, the more I believe in this. And recently, we've seen some really, some students who could easily get into Ivy League or, top-notch, like highly rejected schools, I should say, on paper. But for whatever reason, they're not accepted and they end up going to different schools. But what I see is how they excel at those places, how they become leaders, how they join the honors colleges, how they're happy. So it's just something to think about when we start to look at these schools. Like, of course, there's all these names and all these schools that everyone talks about. But at the end of the day, you want to find a place where when you drop your student off, that they're happy, that they feel valued, that they feel wanted, that they feel like the school wants them to be there. Okay, so we'll talk more about that as we move along in the years. All right, we're going to play a little game. It's called Name That College. So thank you to Loria, and some of the guidance counselors put this together. But I'm just going to give you 4 colleges, and we're going to try to, I'm not going to have a poll. You can just guess on your own, play at home. So this school admitted about 20,000 students. This is for this year. The in-state rate was 65%. The out-of-state rate was 23%. So students who applied from this state were accepted at that rate, out of state this rate, okay? The middle 50% self-reported ACT, this is a test optional school, was 25 to 31, and for out-of-state, 29 to 32. And the weighted GPA for out-of-state was 414 to 4.50. All right, so Villanova, Tennessee, UNC Chapel Hill, or James Madison. Go Vols. This is the University of Tennessee. So they have become extremely popular with our kids. The SEC schools have become very popular. We had 7 students accepted. We had 13 deferred, and we had 5 who were straight out denied. I just want people to know again all of the information, and I want you to know that we're looking at these things, and we're looking at each school, and we're looking at patterns, and we're looking at when we're creating lists for our kids, when I say a balanced list, we have to take all this data and information into account. Next school, they've received 48,000 regular decision applications, which was a 10% increase from last year. By far their largest regular decision pool in history. With the ED applicants, early decision is binding. Our total applicant pool has ended up right around 54,000. They had a record low 12.9% ED admit rate, and our anticipated regular decision admit rate this year will be 4.5%. So is that Dartmouth, Stanford, Duke, or the University of Georgia? I gave it away with the colors a little bit. That is Duke. Next one. This is from their admissions director. As I noted before, we released our first round of decisions this year. The school received over 68,000 first-year applicants, a 66% increase from last year. While we are thrilled about this significant increase, the increase has led to a more competitive applicant pool. The average GPA of our fall 2024 admitted students is 4.0, and the average SAT is at 1422. So is that Northeastern, Rutgers, Michigan, or Lehigh? That is Rutgers. So we've seen a dramatic shift with Rutgers in the last few. We don't have all the information for this class of 2024 yet. Our senior survey will run in June. But there's definitely going to be some surprises because things are changing a little bit. It is easier in state, so those numbers are a little inflated overall. And they know Ridgewood High School and they know our students, so that goes a long way. But those numbers have really risen. Okay, last one. More than 56,000 early action applications, and they've offered admission to their main campus to 2,640, which right off the top of my head is about 5%. So is this Northeastern, Notre Dame, Vanderbilt, or USC? Northeastern. So again, I don't share this information to scare everyone. Our kids are getting into great schools. I just want to, our community is very educated, very interested, and very wise. So I want to give as much information that I can to everyone. That's my goal as a director of guidance. And I want you to know that we are actively every single day looking at these things, looking at numbers to better guide next year's class, okay? So here is the great news, and this is every year this maintains, even in the last 3 years where it's gotten a little crazy with the application rate. 81.2% of our seniors were admitted to one of their top 3 college choices last year. I'm really proud of that number because that means we're building balanced lists of schools, and that our counselors, our adults, our parents, our students, everyone's creating a really good balanced list of schools for our kids. I always get the question, well, where did the other 19% end up? And here are some of the schools, well, all the schools, I should say, where the other 18.8% of the students who didn't get into one of their top 3 attended. And you can see these are still, great places, okay? And I always get the question, how is Princeton on there? But Princeton may not be one of their top 3. So that's why that school is there. So I went by hand that was a summer job for all of our students who didn't get into one of their top 3 to see where they ended up. So I just want to leave you with this, and this is something that Mr. Nias, Mrs. Wood, myself, we really wanted to kind of come up with just a message for this year in our beliefs as a school and the leaders of the building. We really want to focus on the present moment, enjoy the journey, control what we can control. It's a really cool time in their life, especially as they become upperclassmen. I'm not saying it's going to be easy every day. We're here to help them and guide them, and that's why we show up every day, is to help these kids on their journey. Community and connection. We always say it only takes one connection to make a difference in a kid's life. And we also talk about the experience of high school. So we have so much going on at this high school, and the late great Mr. Basil Pizzuto always said it's all about, our job is to create experiences for our kids to become attached to our high school and want to come here and want to learn. So we have a lot of great things going on here every single day. I'm at the high school right now, and there's things going on every single night. So you know, community and connection, and then leaving it better than you found it. Just creating that legacy every single day, trying to get better and improve. So those are just some things we believe in, some of our core values that we try to just let our kids know in different ways. So with that being said, I would like to open it up for a Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can put them into the question and answer box, and I'll read them aloud. And if they're very specific, I'm just going to ask that you contact your student's counselor. There's one about an overseas Spanish course. Your counselor will be able to help you with that. When can students apply for National Honor Society? What are their requirements? So at the end of their first semester of junior year, they will be automatically notified if they qualify, and the minimum requirement is a 3.9 weighted or unweighted GPA. You can also find more information about that in our program of studies, which is on our website. The question about filing an appeal, although the teacher has been out, yes, they should still file the appeal. Okay, further explanation on world language, please. Are there some schools that will reject an application that only has 2 years of world language, even if the replacement course was an AP level course? They're never going to give you a straight answer on that. So that's when we have to make a choice of, okay, can the student go along into a year 3 world language? If they can, I would recommend they do so. If it's really going to be a struggle and affect the whole year and the other classes, and that's when I would say, let's replace it with an academic course. So, you know, again, like especially those highly rejected schools, they want everything, and even then, it's really a lottery at some point. So we want to make decisions in real time that are best for kids. Can we view the courses online that our student has selected for next year? It'll be available on their Skyward. So if you talk to your student right now and ask them to log into Skyward, they'll be able to show you it. Okay. All right. Are AP classes required to be accepted at competitive college? So it depends on the college, but what a school, like part of the admissions piece is they want to see what courses are offered at a student's high school, what courses the students took, and how they did in those courses. So, you know, the more higher level courses a high school offers, you know, the more a highly rejective, highly selective college will want to see a student take those courses. But again, it really it comes down to each student having those discussions of what is best for them. Okay. And I don't want a student to just load up on courses and be overwhelmed and, you know, it kind of really be a tough junior year. It's not worth it. Okay. I've just been doing it too long. And I've seen too many students kind of go that route. And it's, you know, that's why I said early on, if you see signs of that, we have to have some honest discussions. All right. Is AP in senior year too late for colleges to consider? No, they'll see the senior year transcript and the classes that they're in. So we encourage students to have a challenging senior year course. So the main difference with the new SAT, I do have a link in there that'll, you know, go into more detail, but obviously it's digital, it's online, it's shorter, it's adaptive. There's adaptive sections. So depending on how a student does on a particular section, they'll receive either easier or harder questions. So that's something new. I'm hopeful that this will be a helpful thing for our kids. They've grown up taking standardized tests on the Chromebook. So hopefully it's something that helps their comfort level. Can you clarify requirements for the National Honor Society? Is it weighted or unweighted? Either one. So if they have a 3.9 weighted and or unweighted, they would qualify for the National Honor Society. How can students increase rigor of courses each year if their teachers are not recommending them for the next level, but are saying they should stay in CP? Not every student is going to increase rigor each year on paper, meaning like they're not going to always go from college prep to honors or honors to AP, or it's not always going to be that way. There's natural progression in rigor as you move like from sophomore year to junior year. Mrs. Yannone could talk about that from a science perspective, going from chem to physics or biology to chem, or algebra 1, algebra 2, or algebra 2 to pre-calc. There's natural progression, even if they stay in the college prep track. So again, I want students to be appropriately challenged, but I want them to be in the places where they belong. So where the teachers are recommending them is based on the teacher's experience in the classroom with that student for 6 months. So our students, our teachers really think about these placements. It's not easy to do in the middle of the year, especially for sophomores. We asked our teachers to do this in February. There can be a lot of growth from February until June, February until next September. So it's not easy, but we have to do it at this time for the master schedule building. So what I would say is, if you have some concerns on the recommendation, that's why we do have an appeal process, so we can have these deeper conversations. Can you take the PSAT junior year again if they took it during the sophomore year? Yes. Yep. And the junior year is the only one that counts for the national merit. Do colleges still take into consideration the AP classes you take senior year without the exam grade out? They do. Yeah, they'll see the first quarter grades, the first semester grades. They'll see how the students are doing in those classes. How many APs is too many for junior year? It depends on the student. So it totally depends. I mean, one of the things we have a limit of 5, and that's something we let colleges know too, of like the different rules. But what we see sometimes is like there's a trickle down effect. So a student who's taking 4 and 5, like their peers and friends who maybe should only be taking 1 or none at all, they want to take 1, 2, and 3, and like we see those students struggling. So there is a trickle down effect. So that there's no right answer for that. That's individual. So what are the implications of dropping a class that turns out to be too difficult? So we have a grace period in the beginning of the year. You can usually pretty quickly, basically it's October 1st, the first 20 days. If a student's struggling and really, having a difficult time, we would drop them into a different level, the appropriate level, and the grade would follow. But of course, the grade typically improves because they're in a better setting and they're more appropriately placed. So it doesn't appear in their transcript, and so the implications are very light. Okay, there's another SAT question. I would invite you just to look at the link I sent. It goes into depth on like the adaptive model and the different questions and the different design of the new digital SAT. How do you find out your kid's GPA? Score isn't updated very often. Score is updated once per 4 times a year after each quarter. Okay, so it's just updated after the second quarter, and it'll be updated again after the third quarter. Okay, so it's also available on Skyward. Okay, any more questions? So if you have any more, you can always contact your student's counselor. You can also contact me directly or Mrs. Yannone. As Mrs. Yannone said, she can always be a point person to for you. If you're not sure who to go to, you can always go to her, and then she'll be able to direct you. All right, let me see, we got one more question. All right, and last but not least, what is a safe number of colleges to apply to? So we still recommend that that 8 to 10. And last year our average number was in 9.5. So that 8 to 10 range, as long as there's balance in that list. We don't have a max. We don't have we're not going to set a cap, but it's really not good for a kid to apply to 20, 30, 40 schools. It's not helping them. Okay, and last but not least, you mentioned that student can downgrade to a lower level class. By when can they do that? So they can do it at any point in the year. But really we want that to be done by October, really early on. We want to make sure that they're appropriately placed. It's really not good for the student if we delay it any longer. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. We will see you again in, hopefully April 25th for the College Speaker Series. If not, we will have our junior parent meeting before you know it next November. Please reach out if you have any questions. Thank you for joining us tonight.